What's going on, guys? Today, we got to talk about a very interesting topic. Now, this topic has broke on many different sites and by many different analysts and journalists and all this kind of stuff. It's been out there for a few days now. And that is the fact that Texas and Oklahoma have begun conversations with the SEC to join their conference. And this would mean that they would obviously leave the Big 12. And apparently, this has been going on for about 6 months at this point, and it's just now getting broken. So, obviously, we don't do a ton of college talk on the channel. I'll probably start to pick that up a little bit when college football season actually starts to get going. We'll talk about some of the big matchups going on during that's college football Saturday. Maybe we'll talk some Buckeye football on the Mondays after. Who knows? I'm still trying to figure it out, but this one seems to be pretty mind-blowing and pretty prominent, so I figured we gotta talk about this. So basically, if you guys aren't familiar with what's going on, or if you guys don't really follow college football as much as you may follow Madden, or not Madden, but the NFL, well, Madden too, but if you don't follow the NFL as if you don't follow college football as much as you follow Madden in the NFL. So basically, the Big 12 has been in kind of a bad spot for a few years now. They just recently, not recently, I guess at this point anymore, but they've not too long ago just got their championship. They didn't have a conference championship for a long time. And then I think just in this decade they got it. So, well, this past decade. And they've never really been the biggest or most prominent conference in recent memory. They used to be pretty prominent when Oklahoma was winning national championships and Texas was good and Oklahoma State was good and all these teams were pretty decent. But now, more recently, Texas has been pretty bad. All the teams in the Big 12 have been pretty bad, except for Baylor's been good here and there. Obviously, Oklahoma's been in the playoffs before. They're always pretty good. But other than a few select teams every year, the Big 12 is pretty bad. So there's been rumors for years now that the Big 12 was going to implode and the teams in the Big 12 would get absorbed by other conferences. Now, some people thought that maybe the Big 10 would come in, they would swoop up Texas and Oklahoma, or they would get Kansas along with West Virginia or something for basketball purposes, because this isn't just focusing on football. This is about all college sports, mainly college basketball, because that's the other prominent one. So this isn't just Texas would be moving to the SEC for football, they would also be in there for basketball. So for a few years now, there's been a lot of rumors circulating. They kind of died off a little bit and then picked up and then died off like rumors usually do and stuff. And then they kind of died off at the end there. But now with this breaking, and that it's the big point to take about this that people should really care about is that when asked about this, the Big 12 commissioner, I think it was the Big 12 commissioner, said that he had no comment about this. Or it was somebody prominent within this whole ordeal said they had no comment. It might have been the incident. It might have been Mark Emmert. I don't know. But it could have been. It was somebody pretty prominent. I'm not 100% sure. I'm sorry about that. I'm not 100% sure. But it was somebody pretty prominent in this whole ordeal said they had no comment about this. And that's the key point, because if they had a comment, if this wasn't true and this was never going to happen, they would obviously say, no, this isn't true. I don't know where you got the story. Like, this is wrong. But since they said no comment, they don't want to rile things up. They don't want to speed up the process that's been going on for apparently 6 months now. They said no comment, which means that's a telltale sign that this is actually true and this is most likely going to happen. And I've heard rumors that this is going to go down within the next couple of weeks. Texas and Oklahoma will move to the SEC, making it a 16-team conference and basically imploding the Big 12, because the Texas and Oklahoma move would completely negate the Big 12. The Big 12 is nothing without Texas and Oklahoma. You got Baylor, you got Kansas, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, other teams that nobody cares about. The Big 12 will not survive without Texas and Oklahoma. Some may say that it will not survive with Texas and Oklahoma, but there's no way that the Big 12 will ever survive without Texas and Oklahoma. So these other teams have heard this news. They've seen that Texas and Oklahoma are serious about moving to the SEC, and it's probably going to happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of these smaller teams, like Kansas, like West Virginia, like Oklahoma State or Baylor, have made calls to other conferences, mainly the Big Ten and probably the ACC, and have asked, like, hey, you got any room for us? Because they don't want to be behind. They don't want to be left behind with the scraps of the Big 12. They want to get out in front of this, and they don't want to be the redheaded stepchild, basically, or they don't want to be the consolation prize for a conference that doesn't get a Texas or an Oklahoma. And that brings up an interesting question about what teams would go where in the whole Power 5, well, now Power 4, if the Big 12 explodes. So I'm obviously an Ohio State fan, so I care about the Big 10. Well, I don't really care about the Big 10 teams, but thinking about this, obviously the Big 10 would try to go after Notre Dame because it just makes logical geographic sense because they're so close to all other Big 10 teams. They would try to pick up Notre Dame. Now, everybody knows that Notre Dame is essentially an ACC team. They played in the ACC during the pandemic season. They've played ACC games before. They basically are an ACC team, but I feel like the money's obviously bigger in the Big Ten. The TV deals are bigger. The contracts are bigger for schools in the Big Ten than they are in the ACC. So Notre Dame would be foolish to go to the ACC and not join the Big Ten. So let's say Notre Dame joins the Big Ten. That's another school added in. Then the Big Ten would go and they would pick up probably Kansas. They would probably try and get Iowa State as well to give another rival to Iowa. That just makes geographic sense as well. I don't know why Iowa State's not in the Big Ten in the first place, but they would probably pick up Kansas for basketball reasons, not for football reasons. Football reasons, they're basically Rutgers. But for basketball reasons, they would definitely want to have Kansas in the Big Ten. They would pick up Iowa State. So that's 3 teams now added to the Big Ten. Then I feel like the Big Ten would try and go out west and get USC because they missed out on Texas and Oklahoma because we're assuming Texas and Oklahoma are going to go to the SEC. So if they can't get Texas and Oklahoma, what's the next huge school name-wise and recognition-wise? That's USC. So they would try and reach out west and grab USC from the Big Ten. That would be pretty crazy. I don't know if they would go for another team out there. The other team that I could see them going for is maybe an Oregon or a UCLA. Those type of schools would probably be the last team to be pulled in if they decided to do that. I really do think they would want USC, but maybe they would want UCLA for basketball purposes or Oregon for football purposes. I don't know, but they really would want USC for the name recognition and stuff. So that's 5 teams added to the Big Ten that already has a ton of teams in it. So I feel like we are on track to get a super conference. Not just one super conference, but like 2 or 3. I feel like there's going to be 3 power. It's going to be a power 3. It's going to be the Big Ten, the ACC, and the SEC. I feel like the Pac-12, especially if USC leaves for, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be the Big Ten, but if the SEC or if USC sees what's going on with Texas and Oklahoma and they feel like the Pac-12 is next, then USC could make the move over to whatever conference, whether it be the Big Ten or not. that's the end of the Pac-12. The Pac-12 will not survive without USC. It doesn't matter how good Oregon is. It doesn't matter how good UCLA is. It doesn't matter how good any of those schools in the Pac-12 are. Stanford, doesn't matter how good they are. If USC leaves, and people may not want to understand this or accept this, but USC is the reason the Pac-12 is at least on the map. Nobody watches their games, but USC is at least the reason why people know the Pac-12, because you may hate it or not, but USC is the team in the Pac-12. They've been the team. They've always been the team. They will always be the team. No matter how good they are at football, no matter how good they are at basketball, they will always be the team in the Pac-12. So if they leave, if they go over to whatever conference, whether it be the Big Ten or not, the Pac-12's done. Goodbye. Say goodbye. Those teams will have to find different conferences. And I don't think they would accept lower conference. I don't think Stanford or UCLA would go to the MAC or whatever conference is out west. I feel like they would migrate over to a different conference, which is why I think that there's going to be 3 big super conferences: the Big Ten, the ACC, and the SEC. And it's changing the landscape of college football before our eyes. No longer are the days of the Power 5. We're done with that. This Texas-Oklahoma move solidifies that. We are done with the Power 5. We are at minimum or at maximum, I should say, going to a Power 4. And we might be going to a Power 3 if the Pac-12 explodes, which I don't think I think it's pretty likely, because everybody knows that the central markets and the eastern markets give the most TV ratings. Nobody cares about the Pac-12 games because they play at 10, 11 o'clock at night. Nobody's watching a Stanford, Oregon 10 o'clock kickoff. And if it means it has nothing to do with a bowl game, or it has no significant purpose or meaning behind it, if it's just a regular season week 7 Pac-12 game, or maybe it's like just 2 bum team, nobody watches those games unless it's on primetime ESPN. And then, even then, it still doesn't get the ratings that a matchup over on the central side or the eastern side gets, because those games start at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. People are more easily accessible to watch those games than a 10 o'clock kick. Nobody's going to stay up for an Oregon-Stanford 10 o'clock kick and then it ends at midnight. Nobody's going to do that unless you're a crazy college football fan. But there's not enough of you people out there to sustain the conference. So that's just my opinion. This Texas-Oklahoma move completely alters the landscape of college football. It completely alters it. So let me know down below what you guys think. I'm actually really curious to see what you guys think. Comment down below if you guys are excited that Texas and Oklahoma are most likely moving to the SEC. What does that do for matchups like Alabama versus Texas or LSU versus Oklahoma? Who would you guys put in the SEC along with Texas and Oklahoma? Who would you guys put in the Big Ten? Who would you guys put in the ACC? I have a feeling we're going to get to 2 conferences of 20 teams. So you'd have in the Big Ten, you'd have the East and the West, each having 10 teams in the division, and then 20 teams total. And then in the SEC, they would have to bring over like 4 more teams to make 20 teams. And then I don't know how many teams are in the ACC, but let me know down below what you guys think about all this, because I am really curious to see what you guys have to say, because this is totally altering the entire landscape of college football, and it's crazy. College football will never be the same once this move happens. So let me know down below what you guys think. That's going to do it for me. Thank you guys so much for stopping by and watching. Make sure to smash that like button, notification bell, and the subscription button as well. Join the Juice Club, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.